I always laugh when somebody says, you know, writing is my gift. It comes so easily to me. Well, I'm glad it does for you, because for me, it's more like sweating blood. But I did want to talk about that. And as far as writing, I consider writing, all forms of writing, I take it seriously, including Facebook posts. If you're an engineer, it's important that you communicate your ideas, or if you're a nurse. In fact, I have a very good friend of mine who's studying for his PhD in engineering, and I'm helping him with his treatise. I have no idea what he's writing, but I'm helping. I don't know what we're saying, but I'm helping him somehow. It's odd that when you don't understand the subject, but you're still working on the grammar. I've never been in that position, but at any rate, for me, something that's important because of my relationship with Jay Leno, I co-produced the Tonight Show with Jay Leno for about 20 years, is the importance of humor. I guess that's my specialty. When I appear on radio and TV shows, it's always talking about the contemporary and current hosts, and I'm afraid I don't have a lot of positive to say about the state of humor today. It's almost as if humor has died, and it was murdered by political correctness. And it really does concern me, but the purpose of humor, I always felt, as it portrayed by Johnny Carson and Jay Leno, and to some extent David Letterman, and people like that, is humor is supposed to be bringing us together. And I think my best example of this, and perhaps some of you can relate to this story, is when I was a kid growing up. Johnny Carson, of course, was the late night host at the time, the only one at the time. And when you were a kid, you couldn't watch Johnny Carson, at least when I was growing up, because he was on late at night. So one day my dad said, would you like to watch Johnny Carson with your mom and me? And I thought, oh my gosh, Johnny Carson, I get this because I'd be in bed and I'd hear them laughing at his jokes. And so the fact that my dad asked me to come in and watch the Johnny Carson show was essentially a rite of passage. And I remember watching it the first time, and I didn't understand half the jokes. But I saw it when my dad laughed and when my mom laughed, so I laughed. And to let them know, look, I have a right to be in here. I should be in here. I should have this rite of passage. But that was a special time, and then to sort of end up years later, I worked at NBC News in Burbank before I went to the Tonight Show, but during that time, I was there for about 10 years before I went and worked for Jay. During that time, Johnny Carson was still on the air, and honestly, when he walked down the corridor and he would walk by you, and I didn't know whether to bow down or what. And then later to have the opportunity to actually work for that show, it was extraordinary. And I want to circle back to that, but first I thought we could maybe go through some ideas, maybe some useful tips. We'll see if they're useful as to the writing process for whatever project that you're working on. Then we can circle back to stories if you want. You can ask me any question anytime. But one of the, we worked on this book, I don't know, how many years, Mary? A long time. It felt like a long time. And I think we did a pretty good job. But anyway, here are some ideas that grew out of that process. And this first one I have is, how do you know when you have a good idea for a book or a project? Whatever your project is, how do you know? Well, I wish I had a really good answer, because the fact is, you don't ever know. You don't know what's going to sell. And I'm sure, Luann, when you look at songs or write songs and you're putting together a CD, should I go with this song or that song? You don't really know. You don't know what's going to connect. Your idea has to be unique, and you have to believe in it. That's all I can say. Otherwise, there's no magic formula. I mean, if you look at television shows, about 95% of them fail. It's tough out there. So you have to sort of have something that you really believe in. And then I recommend for you, if you're doing a book or something like that, again, I know there's a whole variety of projects here, but for me, I felt like I needed to get a literary agent. That was important. And a literary agent who believed in the project that we had.
Me and my boy Matt had it good. He had catnip that was off the hook. But one day, he brings a girl home, and she's allergic to cats. Every sneeze was a nail in my coffin. Now I'm in a shelter. It's decent, but they don't even have Wi-Fi.
Now, if you feel strongly enough about an idea, you feel that strongly and you say it's unique and I've got to go for it, then go the self-publishing route. But you do have to understand you're most likely not going to make any money if you do self-publishing. And I heard earlier, you know, it's nice when you make money on a project. We were talking about that. But if you're really passionate and you really want to carry out that idea, I say go for it, but understand you're probably not going to make any money, right? But again, passion, being passionate about something is very important. If you are passionate and you have a unique idea, then you will essentially be inoculated. You will be inoculated to the word no. Because everyone is going to tell you that your book, your project, your play, your song, your poem, just doesn't have a chance. And believe me, how many times did we hear no, Mary?
A lot.
And honestly, we were passionate. We knew we had an idea that was going to work. We knew we had an idea that would work. And we essentially went through, here's the thing, every publisher in New York, every major publisher said, yeah, we want to look at your manuscript. And almost everyone said, no, you're not a known author, so we can't rely on you as a known author, so we need some dirt. We need some more dirt in the book. I said, that's not my vision. I'm not gonna, I'm too old to tell nasty stories about people. I'm not gonna do it. That wasn't part of our vision. But it was difficult. It was very difficult to stick to that goal, especially when you have Random House saying, we're really interested, just put some dirt in it. And the other thing is, I knew they were turning me down for the wrong reasons. They also said that I was an unknown and I couldn't get any coverage in the media. And media coverage, whatever it is very important to selling your project. You basically have to become a self-promoter, and which is difficult for many people. But they said, well, you're an unknown now author, so we know you won't be able to get any media coverage. I think so far I've done about, 700 interviews, Mary? Worldwide, I think. You know, and I told them at the time, I said, you don't understand, I'm the guy that brought all of these talk show hosts on cable television. I brought them to late night television. I brought Bill O'Reilly to late night television. I brought all of the news anchors to late night television. I brought all of those people to television. I'm friends with them. They will return the favor to me. And they still didn't buy it. I had a vision, I had everything, and they still said, no, we don't think you have what it takes. So the process can be very difficult, and for me, I went into it thinking that it wouldn't be difficult, because the person who actually inspired me to write this book, because I didn't want to write the book, I thought it was Jay Leno's to write. The person who inspired me to do it was Bill O'Reilly. And because I had formed a relationship with him, as well as quite a number of other people, but Bill said, you know, you have so many wonderful stories, you should put it in a book. And I said, no. And this went on for like 3 years. He said, you should write a book. And I said, I don't, it's really Jay's. He said, Jay's not gonna write a book. You know he's not gonna write it. I know he's not gonna write it. He said, here's the thing. You write, you know, your treatise, and I'll take it to my publisher. I thought, oh, well, maybe writing a book isn't gonna be so hard. Bill O'Reilly's gonna take my book and take it to his publisher? Henry Holt? Wow. I didn't know this was so easy. Well, he took my idea, my book, to his publisher, and they said no. So if Bill O'Reilly, who at that time was the best-selling author in the world, whatever you think of Bill, whether you like him or you don't, at that time he was the best-selling author in the world, and he couldn't get my book published. So it's a difficult process. We finally ended up with a publisher, and it worked out. But I also wanted to talk about the writing process itself. I don't know about you, but when I hear someone say, I'm going to get my creative juices flowing, that's, I'll say BS, and won't go beyond that. I don't even know what that means. I don't know what getting creative juices flowing. It might work for you. I don't want to criticize you if that works for you. But to me, that creative stuff accounts for about 1% of the process. If you want to get something done, a project done, you have to set up a daily schedule with a start time, a finish time, and how many pages you're going to do. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And you know, also, I had come from the world of television, entertainment, and before that, news. So I was accustomed to a deadline. At the end of every day, there was always a show, and you had to have your material finished in time for the show. So I was accustomed to that. So now I'm living a lifestyle where and it's also a collaborative process. Now I have a lifestyle where I'm in my office, I'm by myself, there's no deadline, and how much writing do you think I was getting done? So my wife, Mary, who's right there behind Luann, was a teacher at the time, and she was seeing what was going on, and she came in to me and she said, okay, how many pages are you going to have for me today? And I said, well, honey, you don't understand. This is not a writing day for me, it's a research day. I'm doing research today. And she said, really? How long were you with the show? I think it was 20 years. You're going to be writing, you're going to give me 6 pages, I'll be home at 3. Right? That gave me a deadline. Right? I needed that. I needed that because I need a deadline. And she knew that. So, the other thing about writing, and this applies to all writing, including emails, including Facebook posts, is you're not that great. I'm not that great to write through something and just post it. Right? You have to write, rewrite, then rewrite again, then rewrite again. There's one chapter in this book about a guy who to this day is a pretty close personal friend. His name is Dennis Rodman. And I wrote a chapter about him in this book. It actually was the first chapter I wrote. And Dennis is an interesting and complex person, and I had an interesting experience with Dennis. It happened to be in Nashville, Tennessee. And I won't go into it, Mary, because you know I'll take an hour, and so I won't go into the whole story. But the fact is, I wanted to tell that chapter right, and so I rewrote that chapter 25 times. Now, I'm a little obsessive, right? And maybe I'm not saying you have to rewrite everything 25 times, but it's so important to rewrite. And, here I am telling you, I don't like it when people do emails and there's all kinds of grammatical errors. I can't even understand what they're doing. I especially don't like it when I end up doing it. Right? Even when you send out an email, you gotta go, I rewrite my emails a lot of times. And we all should. But now, having said all that, I will say that we should not aim for perfection. At a certain point when you're writing, I think you have to say, okay, enough, I have to walk away. Because you know what? After I rewrote that chapter 25 times, I was still ready to keep going. Right? But it was Winston Churchill who said, when you're doing a writing project, and he, of course, was one of the greatest writers ever, he said, you never finish any project, you have to kill it. So, the other thing is, writing is not a solo act. Very few ideas that you have are sacrosanct. They can all be improved. All ideas can be improved. And so I say, ask others for ideas. And not just professional, ask everybody for ideas, suggestions, friends, spouses. I was surrounded by a wonderful team. It included not only Mary, but her sisters, lots of friends of mine. Honestly, I would, over the years, at dinner parties and stuff, I would tell little anecdotes about what was going on at The Tonight Show, and I would get, if people laughed, I'd go, oh, okay, this resonates. Everybody's laughing at this idea. This other idea, they're talking over me, okay, that's not resonating. And it's one of the reasons that Jay Leno would always, even during his heyday at The Tonight Show, he was out doing stand-up appearances, about 150 a year. And what he was doing is going out and testing material. He would be trying out jokes, constantly doing that. So, as I said, when we did my book, we had numerous ideas that we ran by people with all diverse backgrounds. And when you test your material, when you do that sort of thing, you find out what resonates and what doesn't.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham-bam minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
And the third thing I wanted to talk about, as far as the writing process, is getting coverage, media coverage. And a good example of it is the podcast that I did with Luann. Podcasts are the fastest rising star, I think, in media, wouldn't you say? Steve, the podcasts are really coming into their own, but it's very important to, I guess, say, be a self-promoter. Go out there and do media. And here are some things. If you're lucky enough to have a publisher, don't expect your publisher to do the work of getting you in the media. Because if you have a publisher, they focus on their celebrity writers. That's who they look at. So take it upon yourself. And in our case, we ended up, because of the many contacts we had, we also hired a publicist who had, knew people who we didn't, so which really helped. And again, because of my contacts in the media, I was able to end up getting on, on Bill O'Reilly's show. I was able to get on Chris Matthews' show on MSNBC. I was able to do all of that. And honestly, you sell more books through media interviews and that sort of thing, and making appearances than by going to bookstores. That's sort of a traditional way of doing things. Unless you're lucky enough to get invited to Powell's bookstore in Portland, which is, I don't know, could be the most famous bookstore in the world at this point. But and it's a great bookstore. And don't turn down bookstores, but there are all kinds of other ways to promote your book. And don't limit yourself to the types of media. I've done interviews on the biggest cable shows to the smallest radio stations in North Dakota. I've done interviews with all kinds of publications, from the biggest newspapers to the smallest. I've appeared on, at the beginning, I said, I'm gonna do Bill O'Reilly and I'm gonna do my friends in cable TV, but I'm not gonna do those left-wing shows. I'm not doing that. Truth is, I'm a conservative, I'll just say it up front. But, and I'm not talking politics here, but Mary said, yes, you are. You're gonna do everybody's show, whether you agree with them or not, you do everybody's show. And I did, and they all treated me very decently and fairly, and I'm glad I did it, and I suggest to you, you go through any door you can. I've done countless entertainment shows, Access Hollywood, all kinds of, pretty much everything. And again, don't forget about podcasts. Again, an increasingly important role in media. The one thing that I didn't do is I wouldn't do interviews that were, all videotaped, because I knew they could edit my words in such a way. I trust Luann, right? But if I'm doing, what was the big one that was insisting that I do their show? Was it Entertainment Tonight? I said no to. And my publisher said, you're crazy. You're doing Entertainment Tonight. I said, no, I'm not. I'm not doing Entertainment Tonight because I used to be a news producer, and I used to do to people what they're going to do to me. So I'm not doing that. Just a suggestion, once you're booked on a show, you have to understand that the interview is not going to be about your poem, your book, your project. It's not your show. It's somebody else's show. And the last show I did was Luann's. It was her show, her questions. And in every case, the host is always kind enough, and certainly Luann was, to promote my book. So you have to keep that in mind. And I didn't when I first went out. I had sort of written out all my answers. And so when someone asked me a question, or they didn't ask quite the question I wanted, I would just sort of answer my question anyway, and that's not how you do it. It's somebody else's show. And, and sometimes people never end up asking you a question. Oh God, it's Hannity. Sean Hannity never asks a question. He says something, and then he says something else, and and it's like, are you gonna get to a question? In that case, you just sort of just start talking, and then he can react to you. But so what else? And when you do media, you have to bring something to the table. In my case, when I do interviews, I'm sort of portrayed as the late night expert. So I'll discuss the latest jokes and material that I see on late night shows, as well as my thoughts about late night television and humor and that sort of thing. That's what I bring to the table. Another possibility, and I can't emphasize this enough, are service clubs. There are lots of service clubs. I think Mary made a remark. I think we spoke to a Rotary Club once. And Mary said, how did that go? And I said, really? I said, well, she said, that's really good because there's 88 Rotary clubs in Los Angeles County. So they're very important. And they're very important in their communities too. But they're always looking for speakers. So that's another idea. And those are my tips on writing. Hopefully there might be some gem that might be of use to you.